Good evening and welcome to Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news and stuff from a right of centre viewpoint. And we have got everybody here tonight, well almost everybody. We've got Sam.
Hi.
Is Sam really here?
Have you lost half your age? What's going on? We've got Susan.
Hello.
We've got Jonathan, our elder statesman.
Good evening.
And of course I'm Steve. He loves me calling him that. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is clearly going to be one of those evenings. Here we are, sandwiched firmly between Halloween and Bonfire Night. Sandwiched, yes. And we're going to be talking about the usual things, I'm afraid to say. Probably going to keep being like this until after the election. But item one on our agenda is Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage offering an election pact. So, Nigel Farage has launched his general election campaign, such as it is, by saying his Brexit party will contest every seat in the country unless Boris Johnson agrees to drop his deal with the EU and sign up to a Leave Alliance, so-called. There you go. Nigel Farage has effectively handed seats such as Hartlepool to Labour with his pledge to contest every seat and potentially split the Leaves vote in December's election, the chairman of a town's Conservative Party has said. So, that's where we are. Nigel Farage and Boris going head-to-head over who's the biggest leaver. What do we think, Susan?
Well, can someone explain to me though? So how would he hand the seats to Labour if people were voting for him?
So, like, in Uxbridge, as an example, which is Boris's seat, he's got a 5,000 majority. So he's got 5,000 votes more than Labour. So if people that usually vote Conservative were to vote for Nigel Farage, or to vote for the Brexit Party, Labour would basically win because they'd be stealing votes from Boris, if you see what I mean,
right,
to go to Brexit.
So the gist of it is, if you've got a strong thing that's affecting an area, and one party stands one side of it and one party stands at the other, which is often the case with Conservatives and Labour, for instance, then a third party comes in and sits where one of those parties sit. They're going to weaken their vote. They're going to take a lot of votes from them, potentially allowing the one that would normally have come second to squeeze past them and come first.
Oh, okay, I get that.
If that happens in enough areas, boom. That's the threat. The threat is a weakening or a diluting of a vote for a certain thing in a certain area.
Okay, I get that.
But it's not true that this necessarily affects the Conservatives the way people say, though. What do you think about it, Jonathan?
I think this is his last shot before we sort of get into the serious electioneering. He would say that, wouldn't he? What's more interesting, possibly, is the Liberal Party, where they'll be standing candidates. Do they, cease to be a national party and decide that they're only going to stand in certain seats, or do they take away Remain votes in seats that otherwise would have gone to Labour?
Well, yeah, so that's exactly the argument, isn't it? People are saying, well, there are some areas that are Labour-Lib Dem contests, and the Conservatives never come close. And in those sort of places, is there going to be enough of... Will the Brexit take votes from Labour and allow the Lib Dems to squeeze through? Or votes from the Lib Dems, indeed, and allow someone else to squeeze through? So it's not entirely clear how these things will pan out. But I have seen a report today where some senior Conservative strategists think that in this instance, having crunched the numbers, it might actually marginally help the Conservatives that the Brexit Party are standing everywhere. Now, I think, well, the argument being that there's more places where it will hurt Labour and let the Lib Dems... If you normally get, say, 15 Lib Dems, and this time you get 35 Lib Dems, and all those extra 20 Lib Dems came from Labour seats, then Labour are 20 weaker. And the simple fact is, it's very unlikely that the Brexit Party will actually win anywhere. Because although they did very well in the European elections, that's a different election system. This is first past the post. You don't just get somebody for getting a certain amount of votes, you have to get the most votes. And whilst they might be a kingmaker in a number of places, will they have enough seats to actually win anywhere? I mean, UKIP never did. Even at their strongest, they never won a seat.
Yeah, because people were really confused about that, though, didn't they? Because UKIP won a lot of votes, but didn't win a lot of seats.
Yeah, and that's because UKIP are, if you imagine a race, UKIP are consistently the third fastest runner or the fourth fastest runner. And that doesn't mean they have a slow runner. They might be really quick, they might be just behind the pack. But if you're not the first, you're not going to win any races. And under first past the post, that's what matters, being first in each area. And UKIP never were. They never managed once to win, actually under a pure election, a seat. And the Brexit Party, I think, are unlikely to do any better than UKIP did.
But it's a clever move, though, isn't it? It's a poker move.
Well, is it, though? I mean...
From Farage's point, I think it is.
Yeah, well, I'm not so sure, because Farage, I think what he wants at the end of the day, obviously he wants Brexit. I believe he wants Brexit. But I think he also wants to be remembered as a person who helped deliver Brexit.
Yes.
Well, if this causes, say, a Labour coalition to win by scuffering the Conservatives more than Labour, which it could, then people will remember him as the guy who stopped Brexit, who stopped the Conservatives winning a majority that would have delivered Brexit. Is that a good thing to be remembered for? Do you think so?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's always been about the cult of Farage. But I think it's in the north will be the interesting place, because I think that I saw someone suggesting that if you lived in the north you should vote Brexit, and I got a lot of criticism actually because I retweeted that. But I think the point they were trying to make was there are some places in the north, in Labour heartlands, that the Conservatives can never, ever, ever, ever win. We haven't won them for hundreds of years, and we're never going to. But the Brexit Party could win, and they were suggesting that people could vote for them there. So hopefully in areas like that, they might get some support and stop Labour winning. But obviously in other areas, it does worry me whether they'll split the Conservative vote.
Yeah, I mean, people have asked why the Conservatives didn't take the deal, but we, as a party, the Conservatives have never done electoral pacts with people, have we? We always stand a candidate everywhere because we take the view that people, if they want to vote for a Conservative, ought to have one to vote for. Isn't that right, Jonathan?
Yeah, and that's part of the Conservative Party's success, I think, but it's also being honest in as much as, you get exactly what's on the tin. And the other thing is that, okay, the Brexit Party is a single issue party. If you start getting down into the weeds of, what's their attitude to, landlords or so on, nobody knows, because there is no writing on the tin to tell you.
Yeah, they're just rallying for one thing, aren't they? They don't really have a full raft of policies. Interestingly, Farage has said today he won't stand as a candidate himself again. Now, he always has before. He said he's not going to this time, and the reason he's given is because he wants to help his other candidates all over the country. He's obviously quite well known. I mean, do you believe that, Sam, or do you
I think he doesn't want to lose.
Doesn't want to lose again.
Yeah.
Well, the trouble is, he is getting to be known as a bit of a serial loser. Although he's won himself a seat in the European Parliament. So
I agree with Sam on that one. I don't think he wants to lose. But on the other hand, he's very good at doing what he's doing. He's very good at rallying people around and making them believe in what he's saying. He's a bit of a showman, actually. He's quite he's interesting to watch and listen to.
He's a great communicator.
Yeah.
And it's a shame he didn't just say, look, for the good of the country and for the good of Brexit, I'm backing Boris. I mean, he's picking holes in Boris's deal. But most sensible people think, all right, it's not perfect, but it's as damn close to Brexit as we're going to get if we don't want to spend another 5 years arguing about it, isn't it? What do you think?
Well, all the ERG support it, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, all the sort of the big lights in the Leave community seem to support it, with the exception of a few Faragists. So there you are, I guess. Well, we're going to move on. So the next thing is we're going back to Boris Johnson. Prime Minister Boris Johnson referred in Parliament on Wednesday to Labour's renationalisation plans, describing them as a £196 billion programme taking away money from companies. The figure comes from the employers' organisation, the CBI, which published its research into how much it would cost the Labour government to nationalise the industries it currently plans to. The party is currently proposing a programme of nationalisation that could bring into public ownership the Royal Mail, all the rail operating companies and rolling stock, energy supply networks, all of them, and the water and sewerage companies. So, I mean, that's I've actually heard them mention a few other things, but that's a pretty heavy start, isn't it? What do you think, Jonathan?
It's complete nonsense, isn't it, really? Because it's getting the public to pay to have things that are functioning perfectly okay at the moment, brought back under government control. I mean, I don't think there's many people out there who look back, with fondness to British Rail and think, wow, what a great organisation that was. Because it wasn't, and the gas board, a 70-day wait to have your gas connected in the old days. Electricity board. This is going back to way deep into the last century, and it's a ridiculous
The
idea.
trouble is,
and not only
Jonathan,
that,
people don't
it's a
remember,
huge-
do they? They don't remember.
No, because I don't. I was not
remember any
part
of
of
that.
any of that.
See,
So.
you two are a bit younger than
Yeah.
us, old fogies, and you don't remember the last time this was the case. You don't remember the 70s. I was a kid, but I do remember it somewhat, and I remember it ending, and people saying, kind of, thank goodness, with the exception of a few crazy lefties. But now everyone's forgotten, and suddenly there's this idea that the government can run everything better.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is it sounds kind of believable in a way that you think, well, energy bills are really high, we have to pay for gas and electric, which, nowadays everyone needs to live, and I think people then see it as a right, and so should we be having these companies making money out of people? and for increasingly expensive energy bills. But I don't think they look at the reasons for the energy bills. You know, it's not just about profit, it's about kind of taxes and green taxes and all of this stuff.
Yeah, but this demonisation of profit is bad, because profit is a good thing. Profit shows that you're running the company well. If you're making a loss, you're not running a company well, are you? Profit is a good indicator.
No, that's true, and I'm not against that. I just think people probably the argument they would make is that, you know, it's okay when you can choose things that you need, but you can't choose to have a running water supply. You can't choose to have, you know, heating and electricity. And also, especially with these companies now, you know, for in our area, it's Anglian Water. There isn't a competitor, so it's not like a real free market with energy or water actually. Because you can't just change the supplier.
Well, energy is a free market, but
there's only so much.
Because they all buy from the grid.
Place.
Yeah.
But you know, again looking back at electricity ran by Labour in 1979, I remember sort of sitting in the dark for days on end because the electricity had been switched off, and this was a government-owned facility switching off the electricity to its citizens.
I mean,
look
at
Labour
California.
have got a disastrous record with that.
In California, where there's a monopoly organisation propped up by the state, they've got endless problems with their electricity supply, and a lot of these wildfires are caused by faulty electrical equipment that haven't been properly invested in by the company, who's protected from competition by the state. There's no perfect way it works, and I accept what the rest of you are saying, that some of these things aren't true free markets because they can't be because of the infrastructure involved, but they do at least have some competition and protection, which Labour are planning to do away with and put functionaries and bureaucrats in charge.
But can he take those companies then? Can he just decide that he wants to buy the Royal Mail and take it then?
He can. He'll have some legal battles, but he can indeed do it.
And how much do those legal battles cost?
It's been done before, but it was done to make the NHS, wasn't it?
Well, no, because that was creating something.
That was created.
There were private doctors before that who were all forced to become part of the NHS. Now, we look back on that one as one that we agree with, but at the time, very controversial.
I've got news for you, Steve. The doctors aren't part of the NHS. They are still private individuals, have their own businesses. They didn't buy into the NHS. So the NHS, the large number of doctors who do NHS things aren't part of the NHS.
Well, it's a mixed market, isn't it? It's a little bit. I accept it's more complicated. I'm trying to keep it simple.
It's been a mixed market since the beginning. I mean, what they did was nationalise the existing infrastructure. In other words, they simply took from charities hospitals that they owned. They simply took from local authorities hospitals they owned and called it the National Health Service. But nothing really changed.
Interesting. Well, it's probably a bigger subject for another time, but they certainly can nationalise things. They can, if they want to, they could make a law that said that all of these companies were now owned by... They've got to then pay them off somehow. Whether they pay them the amount they're worth or not, well, that's where this 200 billion or so of money comes from. A lot of it is in purchasing the rights to these companies so that the state can own them. That's where it starts.
Well, they can't then get rid of staff though, can they? I mean, you're talking about the government then taking other people's companies, having them for our own, and then deciding to lay off staff, all those things become a minefield then.
Yes, they would have to be organised. I don't know enough about employment law to say exactly what would happen to all the staff, but it would be an interesting upheaval for sure.
Yeah,
and it's such a big change, and I don't expect everybody would stay in the same positions they had before at all.
No.
Otherwise, what would be the point?
I don't think anybody imagines that if an organisation is taken over by the government, its products will get cheaper. It just never ever happens.
No,
and
that's true.
I mean, how is he financing this? And what's interesting is some of the daft ideas that are flowing out of that. One of which is that inheritance tax will become will affect every estate over £125,000, which basically is every householder in the country will not be able to leave their house to their children without their being taxed on it. If you live in a family home and you're the matriarch of the family or whatever dies, it means you will have to sell the home you live in order to pay death duties.
That's right. They're talking about there being no ability to inherit beyond 150,000 or something,
125,000,
which most people's houses, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in London, that's not even a flat.
No, it's not.
It's
and these the younger people who they claim are all for socialism now, they really need to think very carefully about the world they're trying to inherit, because they won't like it so much when they actually see the consequences of it. The consequences of it are no fun at all.
Well, at the minute, you've got your younger generation haven't got a lot to lose, and they're your Labour supporters, haven't they? When you haven't got a lot to lose. I work very hard for my house. I'm the first person in my family to ever own my own home. I don't want to give it to anyone else apart from my children. I don't want to give it to anybody else who hasn't earned it.
No, that's what they want to do. They want to say, well, when you pass away, you don't have the rights to let your next of kin have your stuff. That it just gets parcelled out to everyone who wants a piece of it, really.
All that's going to cause is a lot of tax evasion. People are going to start divvying up their house long before they die then, aren't they?
Well, it was making me laugh because earlier someone was saying about how we pay for this stuff, and someone said, oh, well, we just tax the higher earners. So, now if you earn over 80,000, you'll pay a certain amount of tax. I was like, yeah, but watch everyone suddenly take a job and ask for 77,000 or 76 or whatever the higher tax limit is, a few thousand less. And it just, and then they have to lower the tax limit, and suddenly, before you know it, people that are earning 20,000 getting 50 or 60% tax.
And the simple fact is, it's not true.
And didn't we have like 40% tax in the 70s as well? Like 40 or 50. It was really high. I remember reading something the other day. It was like ridiculous.
We've had very high top rates of tax before, but it could
very
still
high
get
bottom rates of tax as well. That's the other point.
And it could still get worse. I mean, people forget it's the Conservatives and the coalition government that increased the starting rate of tax over and over again. It wasn't Labour never did it. No. And the simple fact is, if you're most people don't think of themselves as wealthy, with a few exceptions. Most people don't. But the trouble is, as socialists spend more and more of other people's money, and less money starts coming in because more and more people take their money elsewhere where they can't be touched, what happens is that the band of who is rich considered by the government drops and drops and drops, and suddenly you're standing on the street shouting, death to the rich or whatever, and everyone looks at you and says, well, hang on, you're earning 32,000 a year, you're wealthy, and the band comes down and down and down.
We already get that where subsidised support is for families. So, for instance, free school meals, a certain amount of money that you can get, it's free. It's all the free stuff that you can get is just below my wages, for instance. But actually, my outgoings are a hell of a lot higher because I have to pay the mortgage and the council tax.
Yeah.
And actually, so it's disposable income that's a big difference towards families, not how much they earn all the time.
There's always been this band of people who are working and earning no benefits, who are actually quite a lot worse off than the people slightly below them are getting all the benefits.
Yes.
There's that, and that's where the discrepancy always sits, isn't it? People looking and saying, hang on a minute, why am I doing all this work? And you're not doing this work, and how come I can't afford the things you can afford? And you often hear that. Well, it's time to move on. So what have we got next? All right, momentum and Extinction Rebellion, our favourite subject. So there's a new election threat to Boris Johnson himself, apparently. Extinction Rebellion campaign is trying to oust the PM in Uxbridge by mobilising the HS2 opposition. Boris Johnson is trying to win overall majority for the Tories in an election battle. The Prime Minister could face a challenge in his own Uxbridge constituency. Extinction Rebellion preparing a bid to overturn Mr Johnson's 5,000 majority. The PM could face a struggle to hold on to his constituency after the environmental protesters vowed to mobilise opposition to that HS2 rail project. So, here we go. Extinction Rebellion, that's a supposedly cross-party, middle-of-the-road group that are opposing climate change, want to topple the Prime Minister in his seat. What do you make of that, Sam?
I think it's actually good. I feel a bit safer for him now because I think they're going to be draining some of Labour's votes. So I think he's going to be safe now and win.
They didn't say they were going to stand a candidate. They said they were going to mobilise activists there. So I think the plan is to
get behind Labour.
Get behind Labour, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's their plan.
I mean, I've already heard Momentum are working with them. Momentum are going to be bringing in loads of people to try and topple Boris Johnson. I'm not sure if it will backfire, though. I mean, they're not immensely popular.
I'm going to say the weird thing there is always with a Prime Minister, they have these nutcase candidates standing against them. And, why would you vote for Extinction Rebellion in preference, say, to Screaming Lord Sutch? When
I wouldn't.
Exactly. I mean,
and also,
Lord Sutch would get my vote.
And because the Lib Dems have come out so strongly for Remain, then they're going to drain some of the Labour vote too.
Yeah,
it's going to be a really interesting one to watch, actually, Boris's seat, and I hope he wins. Because imagine if the Conservatives get a majority and then Boris loses.
Yeah, but I think he'll win. The reason I think he'll win is because he does so well when he's the underdog. And if Momentum and Extinction Rebellion and are all there doing those crazy dances and wearing the funny hats and all the stuff they do, I think Boris is going to be okay.
I think they think too highly of themselves if they think they can mobilise their volunteers, which will be the first day's work they've ever done, more than likely.
Did you
to
see
actually go out?
they had a protest outside the Guildhall in Cambridge today. They like threw all fake blood over each other and
That's
cried
what I mean.
and stuff.
Absolute idiots. I can't wait for them to knock on Mr. and Mrs. Jones's house after just doing a day's work, covered in blood with a chicken nut stuck on their head, and going, "You must vote for climate change. Come away from
Vote
Boris."
against. I think they want you to vote against climate change.
Oh yeah, my apologies.
You must vote for climate change. Oh, what are we saying? Their heads will explode.
They'll think they'll know what they're
Did you
doing.
see that? Did you see that meme of Greta Thunberg on the internet saying, "I'm trying to write my Christmas list from Santa, but you guys have melted his home." It was quite funny.
She's busy at the moment trying to scrounge a lift back from the United States because the climate change conference has shifted from Chile to Spain, so they've had to rebook flights and so on. Flights note to get to this climate change thing, but of course she can't fly, so she's having to put out effectively an electronic fund saying, "Can anyone give me a lift to the climate change?"
I've got no
I
sympathy
think you
for it.
really like the fact that she has to do that, don't you, Jonathan?
I do, I love it.
And also, I read another thing saying that if she has to sail, apparently ships have got like a really bad carbon footprint as well.
I've got no sympathy for her because she
This
it's easy.
shocked-
It's
Steve,
easy.
that
it
shocked
shocks
me.
you. It's easy for her to get home. Right? All she's got to do is go in the garage, get out her multi-million-pound power yacht, and just jet home. I mean, it's easy. It's what she told us to do.
They do sail, don't they? The family sail.
Yeah, and with
Or
someone,
just
on
jump
someone
on-
else's boat,
or
followed by another boat full of diesel.
Swallow your hypocrisy and just get a plane. Because that's what's going to happen realistically, isn't it? And everyone
Yeah.
else is going to this climate change.
What I don't understand
I'm not
though
going.
is, right, we all started off as
I would, invited.
we all started off as cavemen where we had to like go around, stopping ourselves getting eaten by wolves and raped by random people and pillaging for food all day just to survive. That's what we've escaped from, right? And now we've got great technological advances. We can fly, we have houses with heating, we're safe from the world, and these people want us to regress back to that. We're not allowed to fly. We're not allowed to have heating. They would be happy to
Or
go
eat
back
meat.
in a
I mean,
cave
which is-
eating
yeah.
berries.
I mean,
That's what they
eating
want
meat,
from
though,
us.
this is why
becoming more
these
and more, isn't
climate
it?
change nutters going to Uxbridge and trying to persuade the local population in Uxbridge that they need to be going vegan, they need to be avoiding going on aeroplanes. I mean, this will really go down well, I would have thought.
I do
in
think though
Uxbridge.
the next generation, the younger generation, are coming all up very vegan, very aware of what they're eating.
Oh, they aren't.
They are.
I know one child who's a
That's
vegan.
mine.
Yeah, exactly. They absolutely love their McDonald's. I'm telling you, it's all absolute nonsense.
Do you know? I honestly think the more they're aware of that, their actual animals that they're eating, the
I'll
more.
tell you, there's some truth about that with the millennials, right? The millennials are giant snowflakes. No,
Hey, I'm a millennial.
I know you are. You're a giant
You
snowflake.
are a giant
No.
snowflake.
But and before
I
anyone
love
says it,
me.
I'm not a boomer. I'm Gen X. But the next generation, the Gen Zs, they're much more on the right. They're really quite sensible. We're going to have no problems at all. They're going to bounce their way through the world and get capitalism working brilliantly again. Free markets are going to be booming. It's going to be a great time. Great time to be alive.
Yeah, and
just as I die.
I think they're all going to be eating some food because I just don't see them. Honestly, I see more and more kids now becoming vegetarians. And it's not because they want to be in the fat, it's because they generally don't like the idea of eating animals.
Look, we're on the right.
It's
we believe
true.
that people should be free to choose
Yes,
what they want to
I
do.
do.
If somebody wants to just eat plants and be prey rather than a predator, that's up to them.
No, I do think they should have...
First person to get eaten on a desert island.
And that's the funniest thing, like, when they want, if we do go back to this caveman time that they want, I don't want one of their little, vegan soy boys with me, protecting me.
Soy boy.
Yeah, that's not going to help at
Listen,
all.
when you're on a desert
They're
They're in
island,
the
vegan.
jungle.
when
They're in the jungle.
when you've crashed on a desert island and you're all starving, it's the vegan that everyone looks at and goes, you're eating the right grass, you're going to taste like beef.
I reckon, though, to be fair, I do think a lot of it is about how they mistreat animals in these slaughterhouses. So I do think they should have CCTV up to stop people from being mean to them. I do.
I thought for a minute you were going to say they could sell the videos. CCTV so they can watch. You're grotesque.
No! Oh my god, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
No,
All
I
I'm
mean,
thinking is I'm really hungry for some meat now.
Look, I'm a big meat eater. I always eat meat. I've got no problem with eating meat. I've got no problem with anyone not eating meat. But I genuinely do think the more aware people are becoming about how these animals are put on our plate, the more caring they are coming towards it.
yeah.
What's interesting though is the climate
Steve.
change thing, where a lot of this food that the vegans eat is imported from places like Peru and so on. So
And avocado's not a.
Avocados come from Peru. I mean,
I don't think you're being fair to me anyway, Susan. I am actually an animal lover. There's
I know
no
you
no
are.
dinner's complete without them.
God.
And also, he cries at animal movies.
I do not. I've never
Yeah.
cried at an animal movie in my life. Right, moving on. Okay, so just the last. This is one of those ones I put in at the end where you all moan and say, "What this got to do with anything?" But I think it's interesting, and I'm going to tell you why. So, the black leather jacket and skin-tight trousers that Olivia Newton-John wore for the finale of Grease have fetched nearly $500,000 at auction, about £314,000, more than double the expected bid. This is the infamous black outfit that marked Sandy's transition from good girl high schooler to sexy leather-clad biker chick when the couple sang "You're the One That I Want" in a fairground. So, that's a reasonable amount of money to fetch for a few things that she wore. What do you think about that, Susan?
I think people have got way too much money and spend it on such stupid stuff. It's a good movie, it's a good little thing, but why would you spend that much money on a pair of pants and a
because
jacket?
it's for charity.
Oh, what charity?
Oh yeah, that's why.
What
No,
charity?
but no, that was.
They could have just given it.
Yeah.
The thing was that she wanted to raise money for cancer relief in Australia, and put these. I mean, I haven't got a problem with people spending extraordinary amounts of money on stuff that you
Just
you
think
send down the
obscene
charity
amount
shop.
of money to spare on a pair of pants.
What do you think,
Like-
Sam?
Go
Well,
on.
I'm not saying what I was going to say because it's going to be inappropriate for the podcast. But one thing I do want to say about Greece is how come, not being a big Me Tooer, but do you really think it's right that it says that you have to dress as a slutty girl to get boys to like you?
He, to be fair, he was dressing down to
you
become
do,
a cute
Sam.
nerd.
Sorry.
Yeah, they were both trained.
Yeah, they were
the
both
movie's more about
transitioning.
changing yourself for someone else, isn't
Yes.
it? But I'm still not sure it's a great message. Both of them were changing who they were to be alright with a partner. That was, she was trying to be cooler
Recipe
and
for
sexier,
disaster.
and he was trying to be more sort of everyman. And
Which one was the one that was a bit, oh, what's the word? Rizzo. Is it Rizzo?
Yeah, she was the best.
Yeah, it's that meme, isn't it? Where you think you're Sandy, but actually it turns out you're Rizzo. No, what Sam was going to say, which she doesn't want to say now, is that were the pants washed, Steve?
I don't know if they were washed or not. I didn't buy them. Hide that package over there, Jonathan.
If I had that much money, I wouldn't be doing this podcast.
Look, 500. Every time somebody buys something for an obscene amount of money, everybody says they've got too much money, they don't know what to do with it. But the fact is, you work really hard, right? And once you work hard and you earn a load of money, it's really up to you what you spend it on, isn't it? And some people will spend it on an expensive book. Now, if someone had bought an original manuscript from 400 years ago by a great writer, nobody would have said, "Oh, that was a stupid amount to spend. You're an idiot." They'd have been like, "Oh." It's a little bit snobby, isn't it?
And how do you not know that they have some sort of Grease role play?
What are you talking about?
No, they might have bought it for that
How
purpose.
do you always want to make
Well,
things
they'd have
rude?
to use the
girl,
original
no, I don't mean
outfit.
I don't mean necessarily rude. I mean, the girl could have wanted to be like Sandy her whole life, and then she's got a little costume.
I wouldn't even get in that if I
they've not-
starved myself for 6
By all
months.
accounts, they've not bought themselves anything you can wear because the leather trousers, apparently, when Olivia Newton-John originally had them, were already 20 years old and the zip had broken. So they actually had to sort of sew her in to do the...
Nearly $500,000 for a broken pair of pants. I'm done.
Yeah.
You know a lot about this, Jonathan. You've done a lot of research on this. Almost like a potential buyer.
And it wasn't $500,000 anyway. Apparently it's $400,000, which is...
Well, it's,
Oh,
yeah,
no, well,
it's
I was rounding up to the nearest
Yeah.
half a
So
million.
I'm saying,
Silly.
like, Jonathan has bought these pants.
Look,
Yeah.
and not for his partner to buy.
Mine.
Jonathan, you're the one that I want.
Me and Sam are off if you carry on, you guys.
Oh dear. Oh dear, it's all going a bit off track now. So I think we've pretty much done everything we were going to do tonight. Has anybody got anything else burning they want to say? Sam?
Yeah, one other thing. I heard a fan theory that in Greece, the whole movie is about them being in purgatory because they've actually all died at the start of the movie, and that's why there's all these weird scenes in it. And at the end, when they're going off into the car into the sky, they're actually going into heaven.
Yeah, I also heard that once, and I love that.
It's true.
Wouldn't it be great if that was what they were trying to say?
No, just let it be a normal teen sing-along movie without you lot trying to ruin it with death.
Nothing isn't improved by a bit of sci-fi, Susan.
Oh, all right, nerdy.
Nothing isn't ruined by putting songs in it. But there you go.
Oh no,
Hang
I
on,
do
you
like
want
a good
Grease with
musical.
no songs in it?
I do like a good musical. Hairspray's the new Hairspray, not the old Hairspray, but the new Hairspray is really, really good.
Musicals
Ah.
are not my thing.
So you don't like musicals. Hairspray's your favourite musical. Your favourite musical, Sam, is...
Oh, it used to be The Sound of Music, but now it's Les Miserables. Now I've become older and more cultured.
Oh.
More cultured. And mine is Oklahoma. And I guess that's pretty much it for today. So say goodbye, Susan.
Bye!
Say goodbye, Sam.
Bye, Sam.
Aren't you going to do the high voice again?
Bye, Sam.
Jonathan?
Do you want me to do a high voice as
Yeah,
well?
go on,
go
please,
on then.
please
Just
do
do it.
it.
Let's hear it.
Cheerio!
Right, enough of
That's
that.
really creepy.
That's Halloween for you. See you later, everyone. I've been Steve. We've been Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news and stuff from a right of centre viewpoint.